I want to pull over and grab a bite to eat or go to the restroom or pull over for the night, I don't have to get out as a single female, just walk around and kind of announce, hey, I'm here by myself. So it's really nice to be able to just stop, put the curtain up, duck into the back, and no one knows who's inside.
Welcome to the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast, the show where you learn how to plan, build, and live the tiny lifestyle. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and this is episode 242 with Renee Seevers. My guest, Renee Seevers, has done, I think, 13 tiny house festivals to date. She is the creator of TinyFest Midwest, TinyFest California, and recently TinyFest Southwest in Phoenix, Arizona. In this interview, I asked Renee about her personal tiny house journey, why she switched from a tiny house on wheels to a tiny bus after 4.5 years of living tiny, and all about what it's like running the festivals and kind of what you can expect at one of Renee's tiny fests. It's a really nice conversation. I learned a lot, and I think you should meet Renee because she is a good person to know in this tiny house world. I hope you stick around. All right. But first, I wanted to let you know that registration for my interactive 8-week tiny house course called Tiny House Considerations is now open. This is like if you want to build a tiny house or buy a tiny house in 2023 and you want the most attention from me that you possibly can get, this would be the course. It's a small group setting. My co-instructor is Lina Menard, multiple-time podcast guest and just a really talented builder and designer. And we take a group of about 6 or 7 or 8 of you through the Tiny House Decisions framework and help you plan all of the systems, all of the building methods of your tiny house. It's quite an experience, and it will really help you get your tiny house off on the best foot possible. Registration is open now. There's a $100 early bird discount that's happening if you register before the end of the year, so before January 1st. And you can learn more over at thetinyhouse.net/THC. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/THC. I know what you're thinking, but that stands for Tiny House Considerations. So check out thetinyhouse.net/THC, and I hope to see you in class. I am here with TinyFest founder and CEO Renee Seevers. Renee went tiny in 2015 after swapping her 3,300 square foot house in Iowa to an 87 square foot tiny home on wheels. Inspired by her experience, Renee started TinyFest Midwest in her home state before relocating and adding events in the Northwest, Southwest, California, and Texas. For Renee, the idea of going tiny is more than just buying and moving into a movable home. It's about sustainability, autonomy, flexibility, and freedom. Financial freedom, freedom of mobility, and freedom from stuff and stress. And it's about having fun. Renee Seevers, welcome to the show.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So let's start with your tiny story before we go to the festivals. What was the motivation behind your transition to living tiny?
So hard to say because I don't have this one defining moment of or one defining thing, but I think I was really taking control of my life and finding something that worked for me. And I had traveled a lot and moved a lot in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I had just gone at that time in 2015. My youngest graduated from high school and went on to college, and
Mm-hmm.
my boyfriend at the time just up and left one day when I was at work. So it was kind of a life-changing time and a period of time, and it just became a time that was like, okay, time to do what I want, and these tiny houses had been on my radar, and I said, yeah, this is what I want. This is something that I can mold into a way of life that works for me.
Nice. Was there a particular tiny house or a person that you were following at the time that you were like really motivated by, or that you were really kind of moved by?
Yeah, as someone you know, actually. Well, first of all, I was watching Tiny House Giant Journey. Saw some of those videos.
Uh-huh.
And then Lina Menard. I loved her Lucky Penny
Awesome.
and had been watching her show to see the different tiny homes that she had been touring.
Uh-huh.
And so in 2015, I believe, or 2016, I can't remember. I think it must have been 2015, I went to Oregon.
Uh-huh.
And I did what I called the tiny house trifecta. So I took I went to the Live Large, Build Small conference. I took a workshop from,
Uh-huh.
oh, shoot, I'm drawing a blank and it's terrible because she's the pioneer. Dee Williams. Sorry, Dee. I took a
D.
workshop
Williams?
from,
Yeah.
I took a workshop
Okay.
from Dee Williams. And then I stayed the night at the Tiny House Hotel, the Gypsy Caravan Hotel there. And so I just kind of dove in, and that really helped me being able to see things in person and meet people. And I actually did get to go to Lina's tiny house and visit her that trip. And
Nice.
it was just really nice to be able to see things in person. That made a big difference to me. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to hosting TinyFest, is that people are able to experience it in real life. And that can really help you shape your path.
Got it. So did you build or buy
I bought one. I
your
did.
house? Okay.
And I know people. I'm very proud of people that have no building experience and can build a beautiful thing. But I know myself, and I know it would have been years upon years, and it probably would have looked like an 8th grade shop project. You know what I mean? It's just I knew that the first time I would try it, it wouldn't be the best, and so
Yeah.
I did buy one. It was a homemade one, and nothing fancy. It was $10,000, and very small. And you get what you pay for. So I learned a lot. I learned how to fix things, so that was good, I guess. But it was home. It was cozy, and I had it for 4.5 years. After that, 4.5 years in the tiny home, I had the bus built.
Okay, so after 4.5 years, you decided to go from a tiny house to a bus. Can you talk about that decision and why you decided to make the change?
Yeah, the bus was more mobile, really. It was a nice change. The tiny house that I bought, like I said, was not professionally built, put it that way. And so it did need several repairs, but
Okay.
it just was easier to get around in the bus, and I could design a home the way I wanted. First one I bought was already designed and finished and ready to go. I didn't really have any say in what went where. And after living 4.5 years in there, I understood very well how I use space, what I needed more of, what I needed
Mhm.
less of. And so I was able to design something that worked really well for me.
Got it. So actually, can I just ask, like, what kind of repairs did the tiny house need? I'm always curious to hear about like what maintenance issues people are running into.
Sure, yeah. The gentleman that made it, he did not quite understand Iowa winters, so I had pipes that burst.
Ah.
The solar wasn't strong enough. Uh,
Mhm.
the axle. Oh, here we go. This is the big one. The axle was not
Okay.
strong enough for the weight that he built on it,
Mm.
and so at one point, I drove out to the Tiny House Jamboree in Colorado,
Mhm.
and when I was driving back, my wheel came off while I was going down the highway. It actually sheared the lug nut,
Oh my gosh.
and the whole wheel came off, and it was a very, very dangerous situation. Luckily, no one was hurt. The damage was very minimal, but it was a big eye opener for me. And I always pass along to people that I know. It's really good to have a professional build a tiny house, drive a tiny house,
Yeah.
yeah, or at least get that professional kind of seal of approval on what you're doing if you're doing it on your own. it's not a thing you kind of want to throw together as an experiment and then put on the road with the safety of other people and yourself at risk.
Wow. That's terrifying.
It was,
Were
and
you able to get the house like pulled over to the side of the road?
yes, yes, I thought I had a flat tire, and luckily it was on
Okay.
the passenger side. So as I was driving over to the side of the road, the pressure of me going that direction kept the wheel spinning around in the wheel well.
Oh.
So it kind of kept me going until that momentum stopped, and then it just shot out down the road. It was crazy, but
Wow.
everything aligned that day. By miracle chance, somebody pulled up right behind me that had all the tools to wedge it off the ground because you really couldn't get a
Uh-huh.
jack under there very well.
Right.
Had the tools to change the tire because I had a spare. And the lug nuts, like I said, the lug nuts were sheared,
Hmm.
but he happened to have bolts in his rig that were big, huge bolts that fit enough because I was only a mile from the exit and from a tire shop. So I just
Oh
had
my
to,
gosh. That's
basically, yeah. It, if you're going to have a catastrophe, that one couldn't have worked out better, you know. But it was a
very
single axle.
fortuitous.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't have gotten any luckier
Okay.
with
Oh,
my
it was single axle.
single axle. So never again, do I trust a single axle? So what I did was I parked the tiny house and did not move it, lived in it on
Yeah.
my parents' land. And so I ended up cutting off the axle, having it piggybacked onto a dual axle trailer. And so I had,
Interesting.
yeah, it was the only way I could comfortably solve it. I mean, people had said, "Oh, put a stronger axle under there," but still I was so worried about single axle. Even if the axle were strong, you get a flat tire, it could really be dangerous. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I had this odd looking, tall, tiny house. Luckily, it was short to begin with, so I could piggyback it on and still not have it be too tall. But yeah, it was a lot of learning experience, and that helped. So when I was in the bus, I was really, like I said, I knew what I wanted, I knew what I needed,
Yep.
and I knew the safety features to really look out for as well. So being a
Right.
small bus,
Yeah.
it's
So
easier to
tell
repair.
me. Yeah. Tell me more about the bus.
Yeah, so it's a little 5-window bus with an emergency exit on the side. Well, sorry, the emergency exit's on
Uh
the
huh.
back. So a big door on the back and then a big door on the side because it had a wheelchair lift. And so really there's a lot of fresh air coming in, a lot of ability to open up to nature,
Hmm.
lots of windows and kept as many as I could. Just blocked out, I think, two two or three windows on the entire thing. So it's very open and airy. That's nice. A shorter bus is easier to
Hmm.
repair. It's a van chassis.
Okay.
And so I can go to any mechanic. And if they're a little weary, which I get that, like, oh, we don't do buses. Nope, it's a Chevy Express. It's a bus. I mean, a van. It's a van. It has all the
Yeah.
mechanical components of a Chevy van. So it just has a bus body on the back. So that was nice. It's easy to maneuver. It feels very safe.
Hmm.
When I'm driving, when I stop, if I want to pull over and grab a bite to eat or go to the restroom or pull over for the night, I don't have to get out
Hmm.
of the vehicle, walk around, as a single
Oh,
female, just walk around and kind of announce, hey, I'm here by myself. So it's really nice to be able to just
right.
stop, put the curtain up, duck into the back, and no one knows who's inside.
Very cool. And so is the bus winterized for Iowa winters, or are you kind of chasing the warmer winters?
Well, it does okay. It's not something I would wanna live in Iowa in the
Yeah.
winter, but when I built it, I also knew I wouldn't be spending a lot of time there. So, in the winter, I'll go and visit, family is there and lots of wonderful friends, so I do go back to Iowa a lot,
Hmm.
but I choose the time of year that I go, and if it's really freezing cold, I can stay with family, but otherwise, I do like to stay in my home. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting when you travel in a bus or a van. Folks that you meet are always saying, "Oh, you can come inside and stay in the guest bedroom." And I'm thinking, very nice offer. Thank you so much. But I have my home right here, like my pillows and my blankets, and
Yeah.
why would you leave your home to go to someone else's guest bedroom, you know? So
Yeah.
it has all the comforts and of a house to me, and it feels very, very comfortable.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's fun. When you go to visit, you've got the most comfortable bed you possibly could have, your own.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, we've talked about your two different tiny houses and your kind of journey. At what point during that, your 4.5 years in the tiny house on wheels and then into the bus, at what point did you start thinking like that you wanted to start creating tiny house events?
Oh, very, very early on, actually, because
Hmm.
as I mentioned, I was so impacted by the trip I took to Oregon. I saw the tiny houses in person for the first time and knew right away, ooh, I do
Uh-huh.
not want to try and pull something that tall. I want to travel, and those are not meant for driving down the road every day.
Right.
There are people that have done it, and the beautiful exposure on YouTube to people like
Hmm.
me to be able to get inducted into the idea,
Yeah.
but it didn't feel practical for me. So I also went to the Tiny House Jamboree and a couple of the events that United Tiny Homes puts on. And I just thought, we
Hmm.
need this in the Midwest. People don't understand the concept as well there, and the trend really hadn't hit there
Hmm.
yet. So we need this. I want to show people that there's a different option. And so I held Tiny Fest Midwest in the fall of 2017, and had that near Des Moines, Iowa. Had Jay Schaefer come. He's from Iowa.
Okay.
He's from Ames, actually, the same town that I'm
Yep.
from. Though we didn't know that until a while after we
Amazing.
met. Yeah, yeah. So we flew him out from California, and he was our keynote speaker at the first event. So that was fabulous to have him there.
Hmm.
And it was really interesting that people kept coming to the event and saying, I felt like I was the only one. I don't know anybody else that's interested in this. I don't know anyone else that's living this lifestyle. I felt kind of like a fish out of water, like I was the only one in Iowa. And here I am surrounded by
Yeah.
others. And so I felt the same way. So it was
Yeah.
really great to see other people doing it and kind of be surrounded by like minded souls. And it just made such a positive impact on people. I decided to just keep doing it and keep exposing people, giving them the chance to see a different option for their life, and a chance to feel comfortable and accepted for their ideas, which may be outside of the norm. So it was just kind of a thing of passion, and it was fun and exciting. I'd never been an event organizer before. I didn't even throw dinner parties, right? It was I'm the
Yeah.
one that's famous for showing up with a bag of chips. So
Well, that's impressive. I would say the biggest event that I ever planned offline. I've done plenty of online events. Was my wedding. My wife and I actually got married at our tiny house on the property that we were renting, and we had to bring in everything: generators, the tent, the lights, everything. And I was like, I had so much respect. I have so much respect for people who plan live events. Um, so kudos to you for kind of continuing. How many? So you started with TinyFest Midwest, and you've done that every year, right?
Well, I've done 4 of
More or
them.
less.
What I found
Okay.
is that it's really great to do it in the Midwest and expose people, and I love being there. It's very hard to find builders to bring their show models,
Mm,
and there's just not as strong of a need.
okay.
I had gone out to California, where Jay was living, and in that area that he was in, and I hosted an event out in San Jose, and I saw for the first time
Hmm.
myself, because I went and moved out there for a while. Just towed my tiny house. That's one of the perks.
Yep.
The strong need for optional housing, for attainable housing, and so that really
Yeah.
spurred me. Then I realized that I only have so much time. I can only do so many events a year. So doing the events in the bigger cities where there was a stronger need and stronger interest and more builders that
Yeah.
were trying to get their business started, it made sense. So I haven't done
Hmm.
the Midwest event since fall of 2020,
Hmm.
Now it's California is a big event, San Diego, and I just had Phoenix.
Nice. And so you've got kind of the West and Southwest covered.
Yeah, pretty much over here on the West and the Southwest end now. I'm up in Oregon. I've done a couple events up here in Oregon in the past, and several California events. So I think I'm on event 13 or 14.
Wow.
And I have a fabulous crew, mostly from Iowa, that flies out, and they put it together. Oh my gosh, and a team that works with me. Actually, I have one or two people that work with me year round, and then a great team that comes to the events, and they're just amazing.
That's amazing.
I couldn't do it without them. I'm sure you found that with your wedding. There's so many details and so many pieces to pull together. You really have to have good people around you. Just blessed that way.
So many.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At the TinyFest, what's the kind of balance? I don't know if balance is the right word, but I'm guessing like there are lots of tiny houses that people can come and see, both, like kind of builder models, and also people are bringing their tiny homes, their vans, their buses. And then is there like a speaking and a teaching component? Like, can people come and listen to talks as well?
Oh, absolutely. That's a big component for us to be able to provide that information. It's good to have inspiration, but having the information is key for people that are, working toward their tiny living dreams. So we have 2 stages, and each one has a new presentation each hour. And several of them on the community stage, we call it, are panel panel discussions, which are really helpful to people.
Nice.
Very, very helpful that they can ask questions, get several different perspectives. And so we try to cover a variety of topics so that people have that kind of inspiration, that kind of I can do this feeling, but also have some key information to help them get started. So legalizing tiny homes, what to look for when you're buying them, how to figure out where you can, put them, and then build topics as far as, the components and where to get help and kind of what you need to know. I mean, it just goes on and on. I feel like we could have weeks worth of presentations and still barely, scratch the surface, because there's so much there.
Yeah.
With tiny homes and nomad living, there's so much there that, that you could talk about: the backyard units, the tiny house communities, the benefit to someone as an individual, what it can do for them financially, and just freeing up their life from all the stuff around them, freeing up some of their time because they don't have the huge expenses, and what that does for them in their life and their health and their happiness.
Yeah.
The list just goes on and on. So the other thing we try to encourage people is to make connections at the event. We do have all the speakers, the panel discussions. The builders are there. They're great. They're full of wonderful information, but also the nomads. We call it the nomad village, where folks are just coming to open up their home. And it's most often a van or a skoolie or a box truck, ambulance, all that. We get quite a variety, because a lot of people aren't, like I said, aren't towing the tiny houses all over the country all the time. But they have such a wealth of knowledge, and they're just there to help. They just want to help people, avoid mistakes and have the support and the encouragement to know they can do it if it's something they want, and help them find a path. They're fabulous individuals, and then you can always, follow up with them later and just try and glean as much as you can from the event and connect with people that can.
Whenever I've attended any tiny festivals, I've always enjoyed connecting with the people, the nomads, the people who are there and hanging out. That's been my favorite part of it, is just like getting to meet them and kind of hang with them. Usually there as a speaker, so it's kind of fun. I get to, you get to hang out after hours, and everyone is there, and the festivals seem like they become like a place where people who are living on the road can kind of meet back up and reconnect and make new friends and connections.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They do. They love to come together and see each other. Sometimes they just see each other at TinyFest, and sometimes they'll gather a little bit afterward and do some things together, and then kind of go their own way. It's a great way to have community, which is what so many people are seeking right now. whether they're in the road or wanting a tiny home, we hear that word community a lot.
Yeah.
And this community, just to back up a touch, I always tell people, even if they're not living in the same type of home that you are considering, they have so much real life practical experience and, about living small and what to expect, whether you're on the road or not.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're on the road, they have just even that much more information. It's amazing the stuff you can learn just hanging out and talking and just having a nice conversation can really
Yeah.
spark different ideas and different avenues to continue learning from.
Yeah. So you just came off of the Arizona Fest TinyFest, which was December 3rd and 4th. How did it go?
TinyFest Southwest was held, like you said, in Arizona, in Phoenix, basically desert climate. And go figure, we
Yeah.
had the rainiest day in Phoenix history since 1908. So
Oh no.
a lot of people stayed home. And so it was a
Uh-huh.
fabulous event, great builders, all kinds of variety, a lot of van conversion
Yep. Yep.
specialists, fabulous nomads. We had quite a variety of people there. I like to make sure that when someone comes to an event, they can they can see they can see themselves in someone else, So we try to have different
Mm-hmm.
age groups, families, single people, different races and ethnic backgrounds, just all kinds of different situations in life. So that if you go, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that there's someone that's like me, they're a single woman that kids have grown up and I can see myself doing this, they're doing it.
Yeah.
And so we try to make sure that's covered. And so we had a great event, just not as many people came out strongly because of the weather.
Because of the weather.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
it rains in
That's a
Arizona,
bummer.
they stay home. So, but the diehards came out and they had a great time because they didn't. The folks that are really, really interested, they're like, I'm not letting anything stop me. This is my dream. I'm going
Right.
for it. And they didn't have any lines to contend with. As a lot of times you'll get a line of people waiting to see the tiny house. So they got to
Yep.
really get a lot in the time that they were there. So that was fabulous.
Yeah. I'll bet.
And
And then
oh, go
what's
ahead.
next for you? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, that's okay. That's perfect because I was going to say I mentioned, that I got started tiny when my daughter youngest one went to college and I was, by myself. And I just kind of mentioned that again, but I'm actually not single anymore. I just got married last month, and
Oh, congrats.
thank you. So it's been a long time coming, and I met the most fabulous man who builds tiny off grid cabins, and so that
Ah.
that was a match made in heaven there. So we actually bought property in Oregon. And so the bus for the last, several months has been pretty still, except for the trips to Tiny Fest. And it's fabulous to have
Yep.
it. We live in the bus on the property, and
Mm-hmm.
that works out really well. We can take small trips and big ones, but we're a little bit focused on the property at the moment, which is a great thing with tiny houses and homes that you can move around is they can adapt to what you're doing at the time, whether it's being near family in
Yeah.
Iowa, which I've had times of that, and being near family in Oregon and being at the events. And so now we're able to really focus on the property and, building up what we want to do here and just figuring that out. As a matter of fact, like I'm not really sure yet what all is
Yeah.
going to happen here, but it's a great 160-acre space. And we just keep saying it's perfect for people with tiny houses and vans to come and stay. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What part of the state are you in?
So we're in Roseburg, which is about halfway between Eugene and Ashland. So about a third of the way up the state, right off of I-5, just 20
Uh-huh.
minutes or so off of I-5,
Okay.
25 minutes. And so, yeah, it's
Awesome.
temperate weather. The bus is fine in the winter. It's insulated enough for that. And so really enjoying that opportunity. We take it to TinyFest, like I said, and a few small trips in between. And right now it's serving as our off-grid home.
Nice. Very cool. And so in terms of your next festival, what's coming up?
Yeah, TinyFest California is coming up middle of March down in San Diego. It'll be our 4th year there. And it's always a big event,
Wow.
and so many people there that are looking for alternative housing, whether that be backyard units or van conversions. A lot of buses are, of course, are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger
Yep.
deal, and sometimes
Yep.
bigger and bigger buses. So there's just so much variety there in San Diego that it's nice to hit the variety of needs that people have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that there's no better way to really get a sense for which flavor of tiny living might be right for you, and also to just see lots of different designs, lots of different kind of takes on the concept.
Yeah, you really do get that kind of feeling like you're Goldilocks. You go into one and you think, oh, it's maybe a little too small. And you try another one, and oh, this yeah suddenly seems big. Because we'll have tiny homes that are park model, 400 square feet. We've even had a couple of ADUs there
Yep.
that are 600, 800 square feet. Just it really gives you that perspective when you can go from
Yep.
60, vans are usually 60 to 4 or 600, and see kind of everything in between. You go, oh
Hmm.
yeah, this is good. And then you start asking the folks there, what's the plus and minus of this size? What's the drawback to having, like, for me, a
Yeah.
lot of people say, why not a bigger bus? And they're like, oh, that's you have trouble parking. You have to go to a fleet mechanic. It's not as easy to drive.
Hmm.
But what do you give up? Well,
Hmm.
you give up this space, and you can really get those kind of pros and cons to almost any type of home there,
Yeah.
and because you're getting so many different perspectives, and you're feeling it for yourself, those different perspectives as well when you walk inside.
Yeah. Are you scouting any new locations, potentially the Northeast? We need a fest up here.
I am not. I'm not. It's like I said, it's hard. I only have so much time. I have a little tiny team, and we feel like, oh man, if we could do a tiny house festival every month, it would be great for everyone else, but it would be
Yeah.
awful for us because it is a lot of work and
Be
a lot
hell
of
for you.
stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wish there were
Yeah.
more people out there that wanted to do tiny house festivals, and if they did, I'd certainly, be willing to offer any help that I can. I've done that for a couple of folks that
Yeah.
were doing events, in their area. I just can't do it all myself. And I know you used to have a couple of fabulous ones. Of course, the Big Mass up there
Yep.
with
Big Mass.
Miranda, yeah,
Yep.
and
And
there was a
Tiny
Vermont.
House Fest Vermont. Yeah.
Yeah, Vermont, yeah, and so I'm not sure if those are still going, but I just had somebody ask me the other day if I would, consider doing a festival up there. Kinda sticking with the West Coast, since I'm here mostly, and the event in California is just such a good, strong one. Might go ahead and try Phoenix again next
Yeah.
year and assume that, you're not gonna have the 100-year rains 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So,
See if you can get that classic Arizona wall to wall blue sky.
yeah, yeah, it was there before and after, just not during just not that weekend. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the Phoenix is just growing so, so quickly, and they're able to
Yeah.
spread out. They've got that urban sprawl down good, but I think that they're really going to be needing some infill options like the ADUs and the tiny homes are going to be something that
Yeah.
is
I'll
going to be
bet.
a strong need for them very, very soon. So,
Nice. Yeah. Well, thanks for doing what you're doing. I mean, it's the kind of thing that, as you've just said, it's really hard work, and we need more people doing it. But I'm glad that you're one of them. So thanks for all your work doing these.
you bet it's kind of a labor of love. It's exciting, and
Yeah.
it's rewarding, so rewarding in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And every now and then I think about giving it up, and then I go, oh, I can't. We do a gratitude circle on Saturday night, the nomads,
Hmm.
before we have a potluck, the ones
Nice.
that are brought their homes, and everyone says what they're grateful for, and it's just hard to think about,
Hmm.
oh man, they'd have one less thing to be grateful for. They'd have one less
Oh.
friend or several less friends that they know on the road because they didn't meet them
Yeah.
at TinyFest. And so it's hard to give it up, but we could just keep plugging along a couple a year and find that good balance in life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. Well, one thing that I like to ask all my guests is what are 2 or 3 resources? They could be books, they could be people, websites, and really anything kind of open-ended, just things that have inspired you that you'd like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been the ability to connect with people in person. And so there's lots of
Mm-hmm.
fabulous information online, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. Some people sift through it very well, and others don't. So I know
Mm-hmm.
your conference is fabulous, and that's so much great information that people can tap into. I really feel like meeting people in
Mm-hmm.
person adds a well-rounded balance to the educational offerings and the
Yeah.
ability to kind of get some
Yeah.
specific help. So anytime that there's any event nearby, it doesn't have to be a big, huge, tiny fest. It can
Mm-hmm.
be small gatherings or create one. Just create a gathering of people that want to build a tiny house and see what you can learn from each other and who you can attract. But there are a lot of different events out there, and you can find them on a variety of websites. I know Tiny House Expedition has a really comprehensive list of events on their website,
Yeah.
as do so many others. And so I I guess I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I think there's a lot of different human connections to be made, but I really feel like there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, Renee Seevers, thanks so much for being a guest on the show. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. We met at a tiny house festival so many years ago ourselves, and you're on the East Coast, I'm on
Yeah,
the West, and we
that's
haven't
right.
really crossed paths in so long. And I'm really enjoying watching what you're doing online and all the great value you're providing. So it's been an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Likewise. Thank you so much to Renee Seevers for being a guest on the show today. You can find the show notes, including a complete transcript, lots of great photos from past Tiny Fests and more over at thetinyhouse.net/242. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/242. Also, I hope you will consider learning more about Tiny House Considerations. That is my small, interactive group course where I will personally help you plan your tiny house for 2023 and beyond. It follows the Tiny House Decisions framework, so that that book, the resource that I created, Tiny House Decisions, kind of serves as the textbook for the class, but we go really deep, and we have the support of the amazing Lina Menard as my co-instructor. So you can learn more about Tiny House Considerations over at thetinyhouse.net/THC. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/THC, and that stands for Tiny House Considerations. Well, that will be all for this week. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and I'll be back next week with another episode of the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast.